Good evening and welcome. First of all, thanks for coming today, and we hope you enjoy the following talk. I'm really excited to introduce you the next speaker, Sibylle Peters. Sibylle Peters is a German researcher and performance artist. She studied literature, cultural studies and philosophy, and worked at the universities of Hamburg, Munich, Berlin, Bale, Wales and Gießen. She is currently head of the PhD program Performing Citizenship in Hamburg. As a freelancing performance artist, she realized lecture performances and performance projects focusing on participation and collective research, often in collaboration with Geheimagentur Performance Collective. Peters is founder and director of the Forschung Theater of Research, situated at the Fundus Theater Hamburg, a theater where children, artists and scientists meet. She has continuously published through her career, and the publications include the Vortrag als Performance, the lecture as Performance, in Bielefeld in 2011, and Das Forschen alle Wissenschaft Produktion zwischen Kunst, Wissenschaft und Gesellschaft, that is research on the production of knowledge between art, science and society, also in Bielefeld 2013. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Sibylle Peters.
I was invited to give this lecture. I was given two very difficult tasks. First, I have been invited very last minute, so I had only 1 hour to come up with a title and an abstract, so I changed the title in the meantime. It's now this one. The second difficult task was that I was asked, I guess like everybody here in the tactic panel, I was asked to perform the lecture in the TED lecture style. I don't know if you are aware of this fact that we all try to perform like the TED lectures here. I recently spent a few years of my life to write a book on the lecture as performance, and the book includes a chapter on TED as the hegemonial model of lecturing in the present. And so let me say a few things about TED, so though this is not the topic at all. TED lectures became famous through the web, obviously. They are mainly a digital format. Usually, web lectures are extremely boring. TED lectures are not, at least not always. Why is that? In a good traditional lecture setting, the task of the lecturer is to take the attention of the audience beyond the auditory, somewhere else, right? And only from time to time, when attention disperses too much, the lecturer comes back to the now and here to give attention a new common spin. So now, if you attend a lecture online, this traditional task of the lecturer becomes impossible. As when we are in front of a screen instead of in the auditory, the lecturer would first have to draw our attention into the life situation of the lecture itself. So lecturers who in the old style try to take the attention of the audience beyond the auditory fail to do that. So they fail to get our online attention in the first place, and so on screen they seem utterly boring. So we ask ourselves, why for heaven's sake are we to watch this guy forever? It can't possibly be that interesting what he or she is talking about. In other words, a lecture traditionally, to me, is a format that is meant to set the attention of the audience free and not to get it all the time, you know? But this doesn't work on screen, and this is why TED changed the rules. A TED lecturer has to be himself so overwhelmingly interesting, funny, or weird, or charismatic, that it feels justified to watch him or her for the eternity of 20 minutes. TED lecturers, in contrast to traditional lecturers, tend to speak about themselves. They have to ground whatever they want to say in their personal appearance, because they have to prove that they are a legitimate focus of attention. They have to be motivating in a double sense, you know, they have to be a good motive for the screen, and they have to give motives for action and thinking. So this term motivating should remind us that in the beginning, TED has been just another motivational training camp for managers from the digital world. So by adopting the TED lecture style in an event like this, we risk to turn our gathering into just another motivational camp of that kind. So what to do? I will try and will not try to stick to the TED lecture rules. I will read out a lot of my lecture tonight, which is, as you can imagine, utterly forbidden at TED. But I will start talking about myself. And let me start by saying that I am a spiritually challenged person in the way you would call someone with only one leg a physically challenged person. My grandparents left church for reasons of their socialist convictions, and my family inherited to me atheism and anti-spiritualism. Nevertheless, when I started to write this lecture, I realized that for 7 years now, I am doing research on paranormal strategies in art and activism. Time to look back. And indeed, looking back, I can see a pattern governing this research. It repeatedly started with my colleagues and me stumbling about some paranormal practice in history or in everyday life. And this paranormal practice struck us with some strategically exciting features, and we were inspired to try and transmit this practice to our artistic action, to performative settings, and so on. So, looking backwards, the whole series I would like to talk about tonight seems to be about inspiration. And by the term inspiration, I would like to refer to what Isabel Stengers recently called reclaiming animism. Or I would like to put it in the words of Kleist, who once said, "We don't know anything. It is just a certain state of us that knows." And this state of knowing is something that is created not inside my head, but in between entities, between people and things and bodies and liquids and the dead and the living, somewhere in the timing of materiality, and where everything can become suddenly media for everything else. In other words, it's not us individually who have ideas or revelations or visions or feelings or experiences. Instead, they have us. They are affecting us, obsessing us, haunting us. In the following 15 minutes, I will give you a ride through projects from this series. It all started, like it should, with a miracle. And meanwhile, I would like to give you an antidote, a gegengift to the TED lecture logic, which means I would like to give you the opportunity not to focus completely on me, but let your mind wander. And this is why I will show you a video that has nothing to do, or just loosely to do with what I would like to tell you. So there might be accidental, uncontrollable comments from the video. And this video has been recorded mainly here at Steirischer Herbst 2 years ago in the Casino of Tricks. So the video will be useful, it will be about tricks.
Es ist ein guter Trick und es ist ein...
By the way, unfortunately, I'm not licensed to put this to the web, which is why for the time of this lecture, the web stream had to be interrupted. This is also the timeline. It's 1444, and when it stops, I will stop talking. So, miracles, prophecies, ghosts. First part, miracles. 7 years ago, I visited Mexico City and heard the story of the Virgen del Metro. This is how it was told to me. In Mexico City, thousands of people live in the streets. One day, one of them saw a piece of mold, a Schimmelfleck, in the metro station of Hidalgo and watched it for a while, waiting for the train. Then, suddenly, in the midst of the mold, the face of Mother Mary appeared to him. Others saw her too. It was obvious. By revealing herself in the form of mold of a Schimmelfleck, Mother Mary wanted to show her solidarity with the people living in the streets and in the metro stations. During the next days, thousands of the poorest people of Mexico City came to the metro station of Hidalgo to see the mold. The traffic system of Mexico City broke down. The church put up signs saying, "This is no miracle." People didn't care. They just wanted to see the holy mold that made them feel meant by their very own miracle. More and more of them came. An estimated 70,000 in total came to see the holy mold. Finally, the city council had to act. They sent some archaeology experts who took the mold out of the station wall and put it into a shrine in the nearest church to Hidalgo station. And in this church you can still see this holy mold, and it is still overwhelming, a trace of a miracle that happened when one man one day looked at the mold in the wall from a slightly different angle. Coming back from Mexico, my colleagues and me from the performance collective Geheimagentur started a miracle search in the city of Bochum. We opened an office in one of many empty shops in the center of Bochum and called it Wunderannahmestelle, Office for the Approval of Miracles. And in the next few weeks we met many wondrous people who felt invited, and rightly so, to claim a miracle for themselves, a miracle they felt meant by. And I would like to give you two examples of the spectrum of miracles you might get by opening up a center for miracle approval. At one end of the spectrum, there was this crazy man who claimed that he switches sizes. One day, he was very small. If he went to the next city, the neighboring city, he said that he would only be 1 meter 10. And when coming back, he would grow again. He was kind of annoyed by this process of shrinking and growing, but he said that there's one good thing about it, because seen with a surveillance camera from afar, he would be so tiny that he would be hardly detectable. So we tried to witness this phenomenon with our video camera, and indeed, this man looked tiny on screen. Well, believe it or not. On the other end of the spectrum, there were workers from the local factory, the Opel factory in Bochum, cars. They came to the office to claim their latest strike as a miracle, because this strike was organized against the will of the union, without the support of the union. So the workers of the factory organized themselves and they squatted the factory. After 2 days, the owner, which is General Motors, called the police to evict the workers by force. So the Bochum police came to the factory with 5 buses, driving fast to the blocked gate. And the workers were afraid and prepared themselves to defend themselves against tear gas and police batons. And then the policemen unloaded the buses, and the workers couldn't believe their eyes, because the police brought their field kitchen to the factory. They started to serve soup and sausages, bread and beer to the workers, and declared their solidarity with their uprisal. Second part, prophecies. In the 13th century, there has been a special custom in rural France. People from small villages believed that the first word a stranger would say coming to the village could be read as an oracle for the future of the community. Today, official politics is governed very much by systems of prognosis which try to convince us that there's no alternative to a certain line of action. So today, the future is no longer something to discuss, but often enough it's something to end all discussion. It no longer seems to be an open dimension, but something meant to take the present under arrest. So under these conditions, it seemed attractive to us to take forecasting in our own hands again and to develop our own methods of future telling from an art and activism perspective. To do so, popular customs like the one from medieval France seemed to be a good starting point and at least as relevant as formal statistics. Imagine to just transpose the old custom connected to the words of strangers, to the present situation at the borders of the European fortress. Imagine to collect all the first lines strangers, illegal immigrants to the European Union say when they manage to cross the border. Imagine a collective process of interpretation to read these lines as oracles telling the future of the continent. Imagine what it would mean practically to get these lines documented and how this even might change the experience of the arrival. My colleagues and me, we didn't do this. I think it still has to be done, but we did something else. We combined a custom with a contemporary economic prognosis. This was in the beginning of 2008 when the banks announced that China will be our future. I don't know if you remember these signs. China will be our future. They wanted us to invest in China funds. So we took this line, China is our future, literally, and did a time travel to Beijing. And there we approached all kinds of people, professors, prostitutes, taxi drivers, vendors, squatters, artists, all with the same plea. We told them that we were told that they are our future. And that because of this, we would like to ask them for some advice how to deal with this future that is lying ahead of us. Most of the people in Beijing seemed surprised and answered something like, wow, we thought it would be the other way around. So we had a lot of conversations about how capitalism is constantly moving the future around the globe like a carrot hanging in front of us, and how capitalism then somehow consumes future before it even starts. So we recorded 64 advices given to us by the people of Beijing, and we took them home to assemble them in the form of a video I Ching. The oracle was called Oracle of the Golden Weeks and was used in different contexts of art and activism. You had to approach the I Ching with a question, and then with classical I Ching techniques you had to select one of the oracles. Let me read out to you two exemplary questions and answers. Question: how is the relation between the individual and the collective going to change in the future? Answer of the oracle number 13, named Boss of Action Bar. That's the guy who gave the advice. The answer was, first, you learn to give up. Then you learn to give up giving up. Second question, is there going to be a different type of future than the one of economical growth? And the answer was given by the oracle 34, named Homeless Man. And he said, you better get dressed for the winter, which was in the beginning of 2008. So, third part, ghosts. In the little town Hyattsville in New York State, nothing much ever happened until the first telegraphic line of the United States was installed there in 1843. Shortly after that, a strange phenomenon was famously witnessed in the house of the Sisters Fox. There were knockings of an undetectable source, and these knockings were discovered to be a telegraphic code, a channel from the afterworld, from the world of the dead. So the house soon got too small for all the people who wanted to use this channel. It turned out that the knockings followed the Sisters Fox wherever they went. So the Sisters Fox started to tour the US they started to tour the US to provide this channel to the afterworld to bigger and bigger audiences. And only decades later, when one of the sisters died, the other revealed that under the long skirts of that period, the sisters together performed a virtuosic step dance all the time. So this initial scenario of spiritualism has been discussed at length, but it hasn't been pointed out very often what the long skirts of the Sisters Fox already hint to. The Sisters Fox inspired a feminist movement of women conquering the public halls and lecterns. In the 1840s, women were still commanded by most Christian churches to keep quiet in public. And really, there were almost no occasions where women addressed a mixed public audience. So the Sisters Fox changed this. All over the country, suddenly women started to become trance lecturers. They claimed to be obsessed by spirits and approached the lecterns to lend their voices to them. As media for spirits talk, women started to preach and teach. For example, many of them preached against slavery. One of them was called Exa White Sprague. She was so overwhelming as a lecturer. She was very young, half Indian. She was so overwhelming that nobody ever doubted that she had to be obsessed by the spirit of a dead man. Because how could this young woman talk about philosophy the way she did without a dead man standing behind her? So I would like to you to remember her name as one of many, because this means to remember that it's just 170 years ago that women conquered the arena of public speech, and they did so by claiming to speak for spirits. Maybe the borders between the dead and the living aren't any better than all the other borders, the borders of gender, of private property, of the European Union. Obviously, ghosts and spirits can be powerful partners when it comes to transgress borders. But how to adopt this tactical pattern for contemporary art and activism? This year, we turned our children's theater in Hamburg, the Fundus Theater, into a spook insurance. Our services are mainly aimed at schools. We argue that not only in this elitist academy of Hogwarts, but also in completely normal schools are frequently haunted by ghosts. So by booking a spook insurance at the Fundus Theater, schools make sure that we assist them in dealing with their ghosts. So children call us and report a spook, and then we start an investigation in the school. In this investigation, all children draw emotional maps of their school, indicating what kind of atmosphere they sense in different areas of the school. If many children sense the same thing in a certain area, and it is not self-evident why this might be so, we go there all together, and then we try to communicate to the spirit of the place. We try to get a hold of the spirit. We give it a name, we speculate about its origin and its unfulfilled desires. And then we take the spirit together to the theater and invite the children to come there, and during a performance to decide how to handle their school ghosts in the future. Is there something to be done about life in school to put a certain spirit at rest? Often children decide to take the spirits back to school and give them a certain part in everyday school life. In one school, for example, a ghost had been detected within the blackboard. This ghost had the bad habit to make children forget all the answers when they were called to the front of the classroom. To deal with this ghost, children invented a new rule that from now on they will only approach the front of the classroom in couples. In another school, the lonesome spirit of a former pupil was found trapped in the teacher's room. Until then, children hadn't been allowed to enter this room unless something really went wrong and they were called to enter. Now the children decided that the spirit of the lonely pupil has to get a little shrine in this room, and so from now on children are allowed to enter the teacher's room to visit the shrine of the lonely pupil and leave a small gift there whenever they feel that the spirit needs their comfort. Thank you for your attention.